Hello, it's your host KebbieG. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, also the bell notifications. Don't forget to check out the sweet stuff that's down in the description down below. Hello, welcome, and we're going to discuss the best Planeswalkers for constructed formats based on how much how much play they see, how powerful overall is the card themselves, and so my criteria is it got to be at least 3 printings that are standard or Pioneer and Modern legal. So my number 1 best Planeswalker I think overall is Teferi. Almost every printing of him Planeswalker wise is pretty strong, and it's everything that Jace kind of wants to be overall. Number 30 is Liliana. She has multiple 3-drop printings, so she is pretty strong overall, and I think she's qualifies as one of the best cards Planeswalker wise for black. She is the best black Planeswalker, so that's pretty important. She has the 4-drop one. It's also pretty good that has a similar effect to Liliana the Veil, so I actually like Liliana. Most of them work together quite well with each other. So number 29 is Karn, the brand new Living Legacy. Pretty subpar when it comes to a Karn Planeswalker. The Great Creator is really strong, and I think that is the best Karn. Of course, Liberated is second, but the Urza is probably third. So I think overall Karn is probably the 29th. You could say he's 28th, depending on how you feel about Chandra, but I think Karn the Great Creator is a better overall card than most of the other Planeswalkers coming up. So he elevates them, I think, much higher. Number 28 is Chandra. She's higher than Jace because of the fact that there's a lot more constructed playable Chandras. So we have the 3-drop, we have a 4-drop, we have the 5-drop's okay. There's another 3-drop, there's a 6-drop, all of which are at least semi-competitive playable. So she gets to be 28th over Jace is because of the fact that she has more printings that are constructed playable over him. Now, we have Jace at 27. Now, Jace the Mind Sculptor extremely elevates Jace up to 27. If he was not printed, he would be much lower. A lot of the Jaces are subpar, like Castaway, the Mirror one. I can keep listing them off. A lot of them are just really bad. The one like pay 0, your opponent mills 10, like he's a 5-drop. There's just like so many Jaces that I think are not that good at all. And we have Jace Prodigy, which I think is one of the other best Jace. But I think arguably you could say most of the ones from that cycle are the best, or some of the best for them. 26 I say is Sorin. Most Sorins outside of these two are kind of flatlined. They all have similar power level, similar effects. And I think Sorin the Mirthless is pretty good for card advantage. And the 3-drop Sorin, of course, is the iconic staple for vampires existing in Pioneer and Modern. If it was not in the format, I think vampires would be just a dead tribe. Number 26 is Nissa. The 3-drop Nissa is actually pretty constructed playable. Who Shakes the World has been a format staple since it's been printed. I think overall she is one of the best green Planeswalkers, arguably the best of a cycle. Most of hers, I think Planeswalkers work quite well together. They don't necessarily depend on having a creature because they produce everything themselves and they are individually, depend more on your lands. The 3-drop one from Magic Origins also is pretty solid. But yeah, I think she's number 25. 24, we have Kaya, which gets extremely uplifted by a Orzhov Super. And if it wasn't for her, I think Kaya would be much lower on the list. Geist Hunter, I guess, is okay. If you could somehow capitalize on the -2 a decent amount of times per turn cycle. But I don't think she's that constructed playable. The 5-drop one is okay. Not great. 23 on our list is Nixilis. The reason why not, I guess, Kaya is higher than him
is strictly because, well, the backup is better. Nixilis Reunited is, and the other uncommon 5-drop are not that constructed playable, but the Orzhov has seen more play, I believe, in older Eternal formats. So Pioneer and Modern, I've seen more Kaya's come in for Graveyard Hate, as well as eat up a 1-drop like Ragavan. Nixilis the Adversary definitely elevates Nixilis as a whole. There is 3 of them, so he barely qualifies. Now keep in mind, I do not have Engrath on this Planeswalker list because of the fact that the 3rd version of Engrath is a Planeswalker version. So, I mean, I don't know. You could say he should be on here, but he would be much lower. Definitely much lower. The 5-drop Engrath is definitely a lot better than this Nixilis. Overall, he's a reasonable card. 22 is Nicol Bolas. A lot of the Bolases, once they come down, they pretty much can end the game by themselves, which is why they're higher than a lot of the other Planeswalkers. So a lot of them are 7-drops, 8-drops, 9-drops. We do have a 5-drop, and we do have a 4-drop, which can flip over to a card. Most of them produce card advantage, which is really important. Overall, I think he is the 9th best Planeswalker, flatlined. Most of them can't take over the game. They're basically like Karn Liberated. They come down. They're going to win, but they just require a lot more different mana. Grix is colored, so that's why they're much weaker, of course, than Karn Liberated. 21 is Elspeth. Now, we got the newest printing over on the left, which is a reasonable card. Most of the printings of Elspeth are basically what Mono White wants, done correctly. So overall, I think she's perfect when it comes to a Mono White Planeswalker. Most of them care about small creatures, so she just really works well with what Mono White's identity is trying to be. So I think she's definitely the best of the white cycle. 20 is Vivien. Now, the one on the right is the newest printing, as well as she is a combo piece. The one on the left is one of the best of the Viviens, basically giving 2 counters. They get trampled on a turn. Basically, a better fight is the -3, and finding a threat to close the game out is your -5. I believe it does see play in Pioneer. It's pretty good overall, I think. Definitely, she is in the middle of the road when it comes to green Planeswalkers, but she's much better than the other ones that are coming up. And number 19 is Gideon. Now, the reason why he's much higher on the list is you could arguably say these two are both constructed playable, even though that the one on the right has kind of got outclassed by the Wandering Emperor. The Wandering Emperor does not have enough printings yet to be on this list, so he still is a solid overall Gideon. The 1-drop is also pretty solid that flips over into a Planeswalker, as well as Gideon the Trials, which is at the right cost to maybe come back into a constructive format. Number 18 is Tezzeret. Now, Agent of Bolas, I think overall is pretty solid. Probably the best of the Tezzerets. Master of the Bridge is arguably the best. I shouldn't say the best, because he's more of what I actually like. He's fun, but he's not necessarily constructed playable. A lot of the Tezzerets all care about artifacts, really help you with card advantage for artifacts. So they are very consistent. Artifacts are usually a very push type. There's always some sort of artifact deck in the upper tiers of most Eternal formats, and there's a reason for it. Because for one, they don't cost, for the most part, any actual color, so they can be put into any deck. And, of course, a lot of them draw cards or have some sort of effect that gives you colors that you want. 17 is elevated strictly because of Part of the Veils, which is used in Legacy quite a bit. I think she actually is her own deck in Legacy. So she, by herself, elevates Narsets up much higher. If she didn't get printed and there was a different 3-drop, Narset would probably be in the bottom 5 based on the other two options. So the uncommon one, which you're going to see in a lot of these, are honestly the best printing of the Planeswalker. And yeah, so the uncommon one elevates this. Your opponent can't draw more than 1 card per turn. Pretty busted. Is the reason why she's brewed around for looting decks as well. And her -2 minuses to get the best non-creature spell, non-land at the top 4 of your deck. Pretty good overall for control. 16 on the list is my favorite Planeswalker, which is why he's much lower than I probably would have rated him. But he is arguably one of my favorite Planeswalkers if you are an aggro player. He kind of does everything you want. Fighting, makes your creatures bigger. So Riot gives them haste. Can't be countered, so blue decks can't stop you. He kind of does everything that a traditional aggro player would want. The reason why he's much lower, arguably, is because all of his modes outside of Chaos Bringer's ultimate, for one, don't make creatures, so they depend on you having creatures in your deck, which makes them lower at 16. And the Domri Ray does create card advantage and fight, but like I said, I believe these all depend on you having creatures in your deck, and they can't win by themselves, which is why they are much lower on the overall list. I think all 3 of them are pretty good though. 15 is Nahiri. Nahiri the Harbinger is the reason why she's higher on this list. She makes it higher than the next Planeswalker strictly because her second best printing is better than the other. So Nahiri is a modern staple. I would love it if she was actually reprinted back through standard again. She'd be so cool to have again. But we got the most recent printing is Nahiri here, Heir of the Ancients, which is a equipment matters Planeswalker, which is, I guess, okay in our own right. 14 is Tibalt. So the 7-drop Planeswalker can close the game out. Definitely the reason why Tibalt is higher. The uncommon one and the one on the right are not that constructed playable, but the one on the left really is, and he's much lower than Nahiri as well, because 7 mana is a lot of mana, especially if it requires to be in black and red. 13 on our list is Vraska. She is mainly at 13 because the one on the left, Golgari Queen, is pretty strong overall as a card. The +1's pretty good. The -3's pretty good. Again, she can't really win by herself, but she is a strong card overall. She requires you to have creatures. And the other Vraskas, I would say Relic Sinker is probably the best. Maybe the 5-drop one you could argue is second best, but the power level really drops, but it's not as bad as the next couple. So 12 is Garruk. He does make creatures, which is a positive towards him. Most of his abilities get creatures or pump your creatures with an emblem. So he's very centric for big, chunky green creatures, which is why I like him. But, I mean, you got to arguably say he definitely is nowhere near the top. And he's more at the bottom of the middle of the road. So I think 12 is where he belongs. 11 is Sarkhan. And it's mainly elevated because of Fireblood, which is the best Sarkhan. Arguably one of my favorite Planeswalkers as well, just because I love dragons. So even though Sarkhan is very niche and basically requires you to be in a dragon deck, I think but even with that, the 3-drop one is pretty good overall and definitely elevates Sarkhan much higher than other Planeswalkers. And we have the Dragon Speaker, which this is not nowhere near at the top of the Sarkhans. There's a lot of other better ones, but I wanted to point out him because I'm not a fan of him overall. He basically has the -3 of Chandra, Torch of Defiance. He also has the +1 of a Gideon-like thing. So it's very uninspiring of a card. So I just wanted to point that out. But there is the Teamer one, which is okay as a Sarkhan card. And there's a few other ones I think are actually okay. Better than this one. But I think because of the secondary Sarkhan being much lower, definitely pushes him down. But Fireblood is a very good card. Number 10 is Ashiok. Dreamrender is probably the best of the Ashioks. It is a sideboard all-star for mill, as well as mill in any format, really. The fact that it can prevent Amulet from kind of going off, ramp strategies, gets shut off by him. Pretty good overall. Nightmare Muse, I would say, is the second best. Ashiok, definitely a dip when it comes to the power level, but I mean, it's kind of hard to compete with Ashiok Dreamrender, which could be just a mono black card or mono blue card. And the static ability is where this card gets elevated, as well as exiling their graveyard. Number 9 on our list is Kiora. Again, Kiora gets elevated because of the uncommon. Behemoth Beckoner is the best of the Kiora cycle. She sees play in Mono Green Devotion as a way to untap Nixos. Drawing a card every time we play a 4-power creature is pretty powerful. Crashing Wave definitely is a huge dip in power level, but she's fine. I don't like the fact that she is a 4-mana Planeswalker that comes out with 2 loyalty. Definitely not that great, but it's also, I guess, okay that if she came on more, this probably would be higher, like a 7. So I guess it really depends on how you define what you really want from that, but I think she is subpar. 8 is Arlinn. Both of these are the middle of the road. They're not really overly powerful. I mean, the backside of Arlinn Pack's Hope is pretty good. 5/5, smash face. But they are very niche when it comes to the decks that they're a part of. So you have to really care about wolves for the most part, or tokens, and Gruul, which is not very common. So, but if we ever play werewolves, then we might pick her up. But outside of werewolves, she just doesn't see any play. But I think she's definitely more constructed playable than a lot of the other Planeswalkers you're about ready to come up to. 7 is the new Jaya. So the new Jaya just makes her qualify. Before that, there was only 2 printings. Now there's 3. So she now qualifies. I think the 4-drop, I have not, of course, no one's playtested with it. But based on face value, the +1's fine, -1's fine, -2 is fine, the -8 is reasonable. So I think she might actually elevate Jaya much higher than the next Planeswalkers we're going to discuss. Ballard is probably just the second best. Jaya, which isn't saying much, but yeah. Number 6 is Rowan and Will. Now, these two get clunked together because, well, for one, they're one separate printing from Strixhaven, is a modal flip card, and Royal Scions also is, probably the best of the printings. The +1's pretty good for draw and discard, as well as making your creature have first strike and trample on a turn. I'm not really sure where she fits in as a card. So that really needs to be, deciphered where she actually could fit when it comes to a deck in Pioneer or Modern. She has the capability because she's a 3-drop, just like the Rowan Scholar of Sparks. But Scholar has never seen much play in Standard, so I don't think she's going to translate over anytime soon. Because if she would have done it already, which, yeah. 5 is Tamiyo. We have the most recent printing on the left, as well as Field Researcher on the right. Overall, I would say all the Tamiyos are very flatlined. They're okay. Are you going to be upset that you top decked them? Probably not. They all basically tap stuff down, which is not the best way of dealing with threats, but you can't really complain, I guess, about it. Tamiyo Field Researcher does make it omniscient. That's right. Emblem, which is pretty good. The other one is not very good when it comes to the emblem that could basically get destroyed by Artifact Hate. But Hermione's Axe is actually pretty good overall. But overall, I think Tamiyo is at the middle of the road. Definitely is not worse than the ones that are coming up, as in worst characters, card-wise. 4 is Ral. I think Ral overall doesn't see any play, and I think there's a justification for that. The one on the right is basically a glass canyon cesspool. It's not very good. The one on the left is five mana Planeswalker. Why play this if you could play Teferi? Why play this when you could play a 4-drop like Chandra? It gets outclassed by either Planeswalkers lower on the curve or a like Teferi. So even though he could definitely win, the one on the left, but and the 4-drop one is not very good either. The Ral Zarek. So I definitely put him right where he is. Number 3 on our list is Ajani. Now the reason why he is so low on the list, even though Ajani Vengeance is his best printing, every other Ajani, including the newest one, are pretty much at the point of being stone cold unplayable. And it's kind of sad, especially since he has had so many printings, from Ajani Goldmane to Sleeper Agent to it just goes on, and none of them are playable. Because they all depend on creatures, and they don't really do enough to put the game away by themselves. They always basically add +1/+1 counters to creatures you control, which are not really worth it. But it is a very Ajani thing to do, which is basically do something so weak, for the most part, that who cares, right? Overall, I think Ajani is the 3rd worst Planeswalker with more than 3 printings on average based on the playability of his cards. Next on our list, we have Dovin, which I think gets powered up a little bit by Grand Arbiter Bitter. The other 3 copies or 4 other 3 printings of them, they're just not good. And I think Ajani Vengeance is better than all the copies of Dovin. So that's why Ajani gets to be ahead of him, which is not saying much. We have the worst Planeswalker, which is quite sad. I'm hoping this gets fixed when we go back to Ixalan, because Ixalan was a very underwhelming, powerful set especially when it comes to Planeswalkers. So I hope they do her justice and print a good one the next time we come back around to Ixalan. But as it stands right now, she has like 4 or 5 printings of herself. All of them are just stone cold unplayable. The best one you can argue is Radiant Champion, but even that one is just not that good. So if you guys have any kind of input on my tier list order, let me know down in the comments. Is there a Planeswalker that I missed? Like I said, Angrath, you could argue that I missed, but I didn't really want to count an uncommon, a mythic, and a Planeswalker deck. Planeswalker. To me, that's not justified enough, because they didn't have multiple rare or mythic printings. 2 mythic printings in a non-Planeswalker deck. So Angrath didn't make the cut, in my opinion. If he would have had another, mythic slot or rare printing, I definitely would have included him. But is there any numbers that you think are wrong? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. If you guys want to see more videos like this, where I break down the cards, whatever cards you guys want, you guys tell me if you join the Discord in the link below. Let me know what top whatever video you would want. Now, the new season's about ready to start. Next Friday, is when I should probably post the top 10 best cards from the new set, as well as my top 5 sleepers. So make sure you stick around for that. As well as, don't forget, I do stream on Wednesdays right now and Sundays mornings. So if you want to stop by and talk Magic while I play a league, definitely do that. So until next time, I hope you guys have a great day.